Well, welcome to Richie's Roost in Shaco, Mississippi. We are in my wife's studio, and I have as my guest somebody you're going to be delighted to meet. His name is Frazier Riddell, well known around these parts here. He is a music man. He plays the guitar, he plays the saxophone, he plays the harmonica, and he told me that he plays the kazoo. I don't know if I remember what a kazoo is, but he tells me that even I ought to be able to do that. Frazier he's written songs and is still a prolific songwriter. He has been a band director. He is now the music director at his church. He teaches lessons, guitar and harmonica, and I have asked him not only to talk to us and give us a little information about some things that I've wondered about for a long time, and you may have too. We're going to ask him to sing a song for us. So I'm delighted that he's here, and let's meet Frazier Riddell. Now you're on. Now you're on. I am displaying some of my technical prowess here, folks, so you've got to bear with me, and he's been gentleman enough to where he's doing that.
And between the two of us, I'm sure we could get nothing done, very possibly.
Well, thank you very much. That's the Christian attitude. So let me ask you one quick thing. Now, your education is that you graduated school here at Canton Academy here, and
I did.
And went to one of my favorite places, right?
I went to the University of Mississippi.
The University of Mississippi, that's right.
After Canton Academy, 79, then to Ole Miss.
Majoring
first in business because I had no real direction. And then a year and a half to 2 in, I changed my major to music.
Well, that brings up a subject that I've wondered about. Now, y'all know Frazier is about the same age of both of my kids, so I watched them all grow up. Now, his father and his uncle were friends of mine, both very astute landholders, farmers, business leaders, political leaders, valuable men for this community, good men, both of them. But his father, Charles, I always wanted to be a fly on the wall when the conversation came as to, Frazier, why don't you want to take over this outstanding business, the cotton gin and the whole shooting match, and go and major in music? How'd you work that out?
Okay. There are two elements involved in going the way of the family business. And one would be if I wanted to, or my brother wanted to, and if our father wanted us to. So with those two elements considered, I can tell you, he thought that farming was a business that was getting tougher and tougher and tougher.
And he was right.
He was correct in that. And my elder brother, Robert, he actually, after going to Mississippi State and getting a landscape architecture degree, he came back and tried to farm. And it was a little headbutting that went on, and it didn't ultimately work out. And with myself, besides working on the farm when I was a kid in high school and getting a check and for good, honest work, I never really thought of myself as being a farmer, and he never really encouraged it. I think he thought it was probably better that we go our own way.
Well, good for you. And let me tell you what, a conversation that you don't know about. I did talk to your brother about this, Robert. I said, what did your dad say when Frazier told him he was going to major in music? He said, well, he just kind of shrugged his shoulders and said, well, that's Frazier. Which sounds like Charles. Oh, man.
Well, I was the last one. I was the youngest. I think he just kind of probably did just shrug his shoulders and go, oh, well, we're almost done anyway, whatever.
Yeah, so that answers that. Okay, thank you very much. A lot of folks won't be interested in that, but I was, and this is my show.
That's right.
Okay. Look, so what did you do right after Ole Miss? when you majored in music? What did you do?
I got my degree, and actually my grades were pretty good when I changed to music. They were not beforehand. And I still wasn't sure what direction I was going to go. And a very important aspect in this, in changing my major to music, is in 1981, I had what I would call a born again experience, a spiritual birth, a reckoning with God, and Him speaking to me saying, I'm real, I want you to follow me. There's many ways you can put it. But at that time, when that occurred, that made me think about everything differently. And till that point, I had only dabbled in music, though my whole siblings all did some music. But at that point, I said, I really love music and I'd like to pursue it. So that is what got me into it. But when I graduated, I still wasn't sure which direction to go. And when I thought about going somewhere for music, I believe Nashville just seemed less intimidating than thinking New York or LA or larger areas. I don't know if this, young man from a small little town in Mississippi could have handled that. But Nashville was like a big, small town. It's not now, but it was then.
Yeah. Well, that was going to be my next question was, why did you decide to go to Nashville? And I understand that now, but there were a lot of young folks like you headed in that direction at that time, right?
Yes, there was. And over the years, I mean, that's always been a steady flow. I'm sure there's plenty of people from Canton that have gone to do the same thing.
What kind of a place, what kind of attitudes did you find up there with the people that you were trying to deal with in the music business?
I never made it deep into the music business, but I was around people that were there for that purpose. But the majority of those people were working at music stores, working, waiting tables, doing temp work, multiple jobs. And so they would do those things trying to make their way into the business. And I think what I did not understand then, and what many people don't understand, is that regardless of your level of talent, although that helps, I mean, you need to have a certain level of talent to be in the business, but it is also a business. I always think of a saying of Sammy Davis Jr. said, the music business is you got your music and you got your business. And it's hard to wrap your head around that when you're just an artist, you're a young, zealous songwriter. You think that you're writing this great hit and you think you're going to be acknowledged for it. And the truth is, you got to work your tail off. And even if you do work your tail off, there is still a small number. It's kind of the same as sports. I mean, you can be the star quarterback on the team, but how many of those star quarterbacks from these many, many high schools that exist make it to that pro level? And the music business is similar to that. And so it's good for anyone, as far as you spoke about advice earlier, and I always tell people that want to be in music, go for it. I love music. Music is wonderful. It can do things for people. Just go into it with not too much of an expectation, because there's many avenues that can be pursued with music.
Well, you have realistic expectations is probably, the thing to do. Say, I can do it. Whether, I guess my attitude might be, and I've never been there, but I have on other occasions in other bits, I can do as well as anybody until I get slapped down, and then I've got to realize, well, maybe I made a mistake there, but but if you go up there with the attitude, I think that you're going to fail, you're going to fail. Like anywhere else, like any other thing. Your analogy to sports was, I had never really thought about it like that, but that's a very good analogy. It's like winning the lottery almost up there, what they say, and being in the right place at the right time on occasion.
Yes. Yes. People, in my experience, so many people that go to Nashville, they go with the thought of being the big time writer or the star artist. And the truth is, just like with the sports, not everybody's going to be Tom Brady or Drew Brees, but within the professional football league, you've got all those other players, you got all the other people that work for the team, you got the media, the support group for staying in. There's just so many other things. I mean, and I experienced one of those when I went to Dollywood. If I'd have really wanted to go more in the direction of being a sound technician, if I would have wanted to pursue that, I could have. That wasn't really where my heart was, so I did not pursue that. But I enjoyed my time as at doing that.
I bet you did. Well, I saw something the other day that I did not know. There are different areas that you can go into. You know, Glenn Campbell, for example, everybody thinks of him as the big star. His forte was his talent with the guitar. He could play anything and for anybody, and so he was well known around Nashville just for his guitar playing, because he evidently was an outstanding, guitar player.
He was, and I don't know how he got to where he did for all that, but him and some other players, I mean, he made it big as a studio session player before he made it
Right.
as a star. And he was probably, people here listening, all of us heard things growing up that we thought this was the Monkees, or we thought this was some other group or this other group. And in actuality, you may have primarily been hearing on that release that was for the radio and for the record that got released was players like Glenn Campbell. Mm-hmm. And they may have been in the liner notes, but they were not the lead act.
Well, after you'd been there for a while, what convinced you to come back home?
I was in Nashville for 10 years, and they were really good years. And the main thing that made that were the people. I still have good friends there and pursued many different avenues, working at a music store, going off to Knoxville or Pigeon Forge to work Dollywood, coming back to Nashville and working another music store, opening up a rehearsal studio at one point. But eventually it was meeting someone, my lovely wife Susan, getting married, and we did have a house there, and we had a son born there in Nashville. But we began to think about whether we wanted our child to be raised around more family and people that we knew. And there in Nashville, our friends were kind of scattered out in different areas, so we didn't have many. So that was probably a driving factor. And our choice was either come to Canton, Mississippi, or to go to the Hartford, Connecticut area. She's from Manchester, which is like a little suburb of Hartford, Connecticut. And there was more consolidated family here and a lower cost of living. So we moved back to Canton in 1995.
And we're glad you did. I have the privilege of knowing her. She is lovely. You married, like I did, way above your station, son.
I have to agree with you there.
Okay. Well, you do a lot of gigs here. Now, first of all, you have a place called Small Town Music.
I do.
Okay. You want to tell us a little bit about what that is and what you do there?
In 1997, Susan and myself were trying to figure out just what we were going to do back here. And we had mostly been independent. She was a photographer, and she worked for Star Photo on Music Row, which with all the digital, that's a lot less now. But anyways, she did that and independent photography. So we really had free spirits in that sense. And so we decided to open Small Town Music in 1997, July of 97. And it was just one facet of continuing to be our own bosses and do our own thing. But there's two sides to that coin. It's I have a friend, my drummer friend that moved to Nashville with me. He would always say, "Oh man, Frazier, that's so cool that you got a music store and you do your own thing." And I'd say, "Chris, I think it's so cool that you got a good job that pays you a check every week, and you got benefits, and you got insurance and all this. So there's always two sides to the coin with that. The small town music was really just an extension of continuing on with what we're doing. I've always you're a little bit too kind in what you said with me being the prolific writer. I think I do write, but it's been 6 months since I wrote a lot, and 3 months from now I may suddenly go through another writing period. But I still never give up on that dream. And as I've gotten older, I just get more realistic about it.
Well, that was another question. Well, before I get to that, but you're in small town music, but you also do a bunch of gigs around the state, right? Primarily around the state.
I have in the past. When I took the position at my church to start leading music, and I'm at Sacred Heart Catholic Church here in Canton, and I'd played there, I always used to tell people, I pay to play, because I would go to church and I would tithe. Firm believer in that, and I would play, but I was, I didn't organize all the music. I just was one of the people that came in and helped. And when the woman that was there that had been heading it up left, Father Mike was in town, and he approached me about doing it, and I felt it was really a godsend, because I felt like I needed a break. You asked about playing. I did play many places in the state and with different people, different band formations. And when I moved back here, I will tell people it was easier to make money here than it was in Nashville, because there's just so many talented people there. So I moved back here and was able to play a lot at private parties, weddings, casinos,
Rotary Club, like
yes, a variety of places. And that the one caveat with that, as a songwriter, is I always felt kind of compelled. Most of the events that I was booking wanted music, the cover songs, the ones that are well known. So you would book these gigs, but you're not really going out to do your own thing. I guess it'd be the difference between being an artist like your wife that just sits in a studio and paints her art, as opposed to if she got a graphics job where somebody said, we want you to come paint this for us and do this commission work.
Right.
And so when she does that, she's probably not feeling the same outlet as she does when she sits down and just expresses herself in creating a painting.
Yeah, there is a difference. Although she does love to do portraits, and of course, she the folks whose portraits she's doing, kind of have a say in what it ought to look like, But she loves that. I understand what you're saying. Well, let me ask you something about this. Well, what you're saying is you don't do that many gigs anymore.
Of late, I've not done nearly as many.
Okay. What inspires you to write a song?
Short answer, God. Longer answer, still begins with God. When I was 14 or 15, my brother Robert had shown me a few chords on the guitar, and I still remember to this day goofing around on like one string, going dun 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 dun, and making up. Went to see my girl last night. Me and her had a great big fight, and I wrote this little bit of a song, but then nothing else ever after that until I was 20. And at that point, the faith experience that I had, the meeting I had with God, it stirred me not only to want to pursue music, but to express myself with my music, and that included lyrics also. Although I've done instrumental music, and sometimes I feel more comfortable with that because I don't feel like I'm on the same level as a lyricist as many of your really well-known songwriters are.
Well, you know, it's a funny thing. You hear, like, for example, some of the biggest hits, like Hank Williams could make one up in 20 minutes. You know, and here comes Margaritaville, 15 minutes according to him. Jimmy Buffett said he wrote it in 15 minutes. And then you got others that sweat years over one, sweating bullets trying to come up with the right. It's an interesting, it's an interesting and intriguing vocation, isn't it?
It most certainly is, and I would say, along with that, you have some writers that have done several things that made it big, but they may have written 100 things that the general public only knows 5 of them. Or you had some well-known songs that were hits on the radio from the past that was the only one that particular artist have. So you have those things too. And there's a real special talent to being a songwriter focused on it, like you were talking about with some of these big names who have written multiple songs. But some of those people have admitted, I can't remember now, maybe it was Willie Nelson or it may have been some other well-known writer that said, when I write a good song, I feel like I've just been I've been a vessel, that I happened to be there when that song was floating through the room, and I was lucky enough to be there when it was. So even though they're the writer of that song, many writers don't consider it all mechanical, but consider it heart and soul also.
Well, there's a difference too. You talk about Willie Nelson, he wrote the song Crazy, but his version of Crazy didn't really get a hold of it until Patsy Cline sang it. And that's when it exploded, but he wrote the song, but she made it hit.
Yes. Yeah, and that's another element of the business. That was with Willie Nelson. I sing Crazy, but when I sing Crazy, probably it's more of a Willie Nelson version of Crazy than it is Patsy's.
Well, yeah.
And John Prine was a little bit lesser known songwriter, but John Prine was a really great storyteller songwriter, and he really his leap into making it was when he had Bonnie Raitt had sung one of his songs and it was a hit. So you have some artists that go on to have their own projects and do their own records, but what really catapulted them into that is a star that was out there in front of everyone made one of their songs famous, and that's one way to be in the business. I have one friend, a close friend from Nashville, that we still stay in touch. And he had a number 6 country song. And that's pretty good. If you make a top 10 song, you're going to make some money and have a hit. But I do remember this also. At that point, he got serious and more pursued the music business for a couple of years, trying to get into that corner there with the songwriters and getting songs pitched out here and there. And he wasn't born into it. He was just a guy from Kentucky. And with the song he had cut, it was because of somebody he knew in a well-known band, the Kentucky Headhunters, back at that point. But I look at him as an example of someone that did make it to that degree, and yet he never got another one and felt like he was going up against big walls while he was trying to. But I think that also is the nature of the business. That it's not easy, and even if you get something because you knew someone, that doesn't mean you're going further. I spoke with him the other night. We stay in touch a little bit, and I was talking about writing and wanting to maybe do some things that are simpler and easy, and he goes, Frazier, man, just do your art. but and that's just the way. His name's Dickie Brown, and he's a cool guy. And but I mean, it's tough. That's the balance. If you're a songwriter or an artist, your balance is just doing your thing as opposed to paying the bills.
Well, I saw something the other day that was kind of interesting too. You've got to have some ability, man, to be a little flexible on some cases. I would think some of folks said, well, you can't do it. This is not song. Jim Weatherly, used to be. He was a quarterback at Ole Miss, right, and decided to be a songwriter. He heard a statement one night about somebody taking a midnight train to Memphis, and thought that'd be kind of an interesting title of a song, and that's what started him writing that. Well, he wrote Midnight Train to Memphis, and they was presented to Gladys Knight, and she suggested to him that they change it to Georgia, Midnight Train to Georgia, and he said, fine. And she did Midnight Train to Georgia, and
oh my,
here we went.
Oh my,
yeah.
That's
a story, isn't it?
That is, and I know there's tons of stories like that. So many I haven't heard that, maybe they are out there, and I wish more people did what you're doing right now. Of course, that's with me. I wish you could sit down and probe the minds of some people that have done more and reached out broader.
Well,
in this world,
you don't downplay what you've done, because you've been an impact on this community. There's a lot of folks here that know you, and Susan too. She's well. We've talked about writing. We've talked about teaching. We've talked about a bunch of stuff. Why don't you sing us one?
Okay.
This is low rent stuff, folks. So
okay, sound man, could you get over here? We got the professional sound man.
Yeah. Bring him out of his shadows over there, will you? If the sound is wrong, it's my fault and not his. I asked him especially to do this for you.
All right, so I don't know if this is a semi-serious song, but this is one I've never released to date. And what I like about it is it incorporates several things. It incorporates my mom, it incorporates a good friend, and the song is not all literal. We didn't talk a whole lot about writing, but with writing, lots of artists, you listen to a song of theirs and you think, oh wow, they lived through this. And actually they just, they heard a story from someone else, and that's what made them write the song. And it's not actually about that. So this song, for the most part, is very true. Kind of a story about my mom and a foundation that she gave to me. But it was inspired by a friend, Ben Dacus, who's from here growing up in town. I think he's in town right now. He lives in Richmond, Virginia now. Great graphic designer, Ben Dacus. But Ben stayed at my mom's got a little small lake house, and Ben stayed there. And when he went to leave, I'd given him a key to the place. And he was on the road going back to Virginia, and he texted me, FYI, the key's behind the cross. And there was a little cross hanging up there at the house, and he had stuck the key behind there and then told me where it was. And that one statement that he said made me think about that phrase, FYI, the key's behind the cross. And that's where this song came from. So, sound man, you got it? As a young southern boy, my mama taught us kids well. She kept a cross at our door to remind us of heaven and hell. Her teachings weren't just 9 to 5. 24/7, her love was so alive. And she gave us her all and walked that extra mile. Then in my high school years, I began to roam. You had kids doing that too. driving to parties and sometimes so late to get home. Mom and Dad would be in bed, but I remember what my mother said: if the door's ever locked, the key's behind the cross. FYI, the key's behind the cross, leading to shelter and love that can never be lost. And I will always remember that love, both from her and up above, because her key was behind the old rugged cross. Oh, after school I left home. 10, I was my own man. I was living the high life with no vision or plan. Some nights I'd party deep into the dark. Next morning forget where my car was parked. And I knew deep inside I was only fooling myself. Then I got married, got a job, bought a house. We had a child. And as he began to grow and venture out into the wild, I tried to teach him what my mother said. Thankful those words were still in my head. If the door's ever locked, the key's behind the cross. FYI, the key's behind the cross, leading to shelter and love that can never be lost. And I will always remember that love, both from her and up above, because her key was behind the old rugged cross. There you go.
What a message, man. What a message. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Frazier, dadgummit, I've been waiting to get you up here for a while, and I appreciate your taking the time to come talk to us.
Yes, and if you ever, just remember that.
Thank you.
What time do you want to do that lesson tomorrow for the, we'll start with You Are My Sunshine.
Let me think about it. Thanks for coming, man.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
All right, take care.
So there you have it, folks. That's Frazier Riddell, and I appreciate his coming. We got some more interesting folks on tap for you in the next couple of 3 weeks, hopefully if things work out like they should. So we'll see you again, hopefully, and if, good Lord willing, creek don't rise, I'll see you next week. I'm Jim Ritchie. Thanks for looking. Bye.